Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So everyone, how are you today?
Good, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so today we will be having an open discussion within our group members. There will be a total of 5 points to be discussed, started with the concept and importance of sociology of education, the relationship between society and school, the comparison between 4 Muslim scholars, perspective on education among schooling, and then the comparison between the 3 Western theories and the comparison between the Islamic and Western perspective of education. But before we continue the session, I would like to know more about you guys. So can all of you introduce your name? By the way, my name is Nurul and Aisyah, and I will be the leader for today.
Okay, my name is Tengku Alea.
My name is Ummu Hani.
My name is Fatimah Hanim.
Okay, thank you Ummu, Alea and Hanim. So let us start our session by discussing the concept and importance of sociology of education. Okay, so Alea, would you like to explain the concept of sociology of education?
Okay, thank you for our leader. From what I understand about the concept of sociology of education, it is a branch of discipline of sociology which study the problem of relationship between society and education. It used the result of sociological research in planning educational activities and in developing effective methods of realizing those plans. The main of educational sociology was to study social interaction. The scope of sociology of education includes the study of the relationship of education to other aspects of social system, particularly kinship, social stratification, political organization, knowledge, and attitudes to knowledge. Basically, the sociological of education is the study of how public institution and individual experiences affect educational and its outcomes. There are 4 societal influences on education, which are social forces, economic forces, political forces, and technological development. So, Hani, could you explain more about the importance of sociology of education?
Okay. There is a lot of importance of sociology of education, but I just want to highlight several of them. Firstly, as a discipline designed to prepare educators for their future tasks, the result of sociological research educators will use to plan educational activities and in developing effective method of realizing this plan. It helps to build strong relationship between a teacher and the class. If their relationships are bad, it negatively reflects on the whole process. Students get forced to solve their academic problem outside the class. Educational sociology help educators to realize the importance of interaction with their students in different situations. All humans are social creatures, and it's natural to interact with other people. The way we understand and treat one another will determine how good our relationship will be.
To Alea and Hani, we all now understand the importance of the sociology of education. So we will move on to the second point of today's discussion. So again, Alea, do you have any idea about the relationship between society and school?
Okay, before we get into the relationship of the society and school, I should define what is school and what is society. So society is a group of persons who share a culture, government, institution, land, and a set of social relationship. While school is a social organization involved to transfer the values of community, society, or a nation through applying educational experiences to younger generation. would you mind talking about the relationship between society and school, Hani?
Yeah, sure, Alia. Okay, school shape children's perception of the world. The value, belief, and norms of society are internalized within children, so they come to think and act like other members of the society. And a good society is the product of a good school system, and a good school system is the product of a good society. So there must be intimate relationship between the school and the society. And then school have a deep impact on society, and so parents' school choice decision are influenced by the group or organization to which they belong.
Okay, thanks for the insightful discussion, Hanim and Alia. So Muslim scholars, including Ibn Sina, Al-Ghazali, Ibn Khaldun, and Al-Farabi, provide their own views on education and schooling. So for a better understanding, let us compare the four Muslim scholars' perspective on education and schooling. So Hani, would you like to share the details on the Muslim scholars' perspective?
Thank you, Ain. First of all, there are four types of Islamic scholar of education and schooling that we can learn, which are from Ibn Khaldun, Ibn Sina, Imam Al-Ghazali, and Al-Farabi. To make it easier for us to understand, I will make a comparison between these scholars. Ibn Khaldun views education and schooling consists of the moral, intellectual training and teaching of human to bring out the potential with men for better character and personality. Ibn Khaldun focused on how the educational system of any society should be formulated in accordance with the ideology of the society. For example, Muslim men and women should gain the knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah and following the guidance of Allah taught by the Prophet. Meanwhile, Ibn Sina views education as contributing to the overall growth of the individual physically, mentally, and morally. He believed that education should prepare individuals to live in society according to his attitude. Ibn Sina did not only focus on morality but also paid attention to intellectual development, importance of knowledge, personality related to body, mind, and character. On the other hand, according to Imam Al-Ghazali, education should cultivate men to abide by the teaching of religion for salvation and happiness in eternal life and hereafter. Imam Al-Ghazali said if the parents and teacher brought the child up in righteousness, he would live happily in this world and the next. They would be rewarded by God for their good deed. But if they neglect the child upbringing and education, he would lead a life of unhappiness and there will be burden of the sin of neglect their child. And Imam Al-Ghazali emphasized that children should be exposed to education at an early stage and learn the Quran, prophet and religion, respecting parents, elder, and good behavior toward classmates. And the last one, from Al-Farabi views, education concerned with the human soul prepare individual from an early age to be a good member of society and own perfection, which is perfection in terms of knowledge and vision. Al-Farabi combined learning with practical action as the purpose of education is to apply and perfection is when it transforms into action. Okay, Ain, could you help me to explain more the comparison of for Islamic solar perspective on the method of education and schooling?
Okay, all right, Hani. So all these four scholars emphasize different methods regarding education and schooling. So according to Ibn Khaldun, in terms of teaching, he discouraged the method of teaching which did not help the student to think and solve problem on their own. So he disliked memorization while he encouraged the participation and discussion in the learning process. Teachers should start from simple to concrete and abstract. Meanwhile, Ibn Sina sees education as making good citizens, sound in body and mind, and preparing humans for intellectual and practical works. Ibn Sina believed that the parents should take the responsibility of educating and raising children. And Imam Al-Ghazali putting theoretical learning into practice, which is true learning that affects learners and their knowledge. Education goes beyond training and information to intellectual, religious, moral, physical, and the personality of the learners. And last but not least, Al-Farabi emphasized that method of teaching should match the level of the learners. This is because education is to produce a good political leader, as ignorance as the leadership level is more harmful than at the lower level. So now we have already learned about the four Muslim scholars. Let's move on to the comparison between three Western theories, views on education and schooling, which are conflict theory, functionalist theory, and postmodernist view. I would like to first talk about the conflict and functionalist theory. Okay, so conflict theory by Karl Marx is a theory based on the assumption that society is a complex system characterized by inequality and conflicts that generate social change. So in a simpler words, conflict theory holds that social order is maintained by domination and power, rather than by the general agreement from the society. And according to the conflict theory views, there are two functions of education, which are stratification tool for capitalist society, and the second one is social control. This theory emphasizes that education only helps the middle and upper classes. It is because only the children from rich family have access to many privileges that normally score high in their academic performance. For example, those at private or cluster school usually have better access to education because they were provided with better facilities and accommodation. However, those with lower social economic status will never get the same privilege and opportunities no matter how great their ability is. In conclusion, the conflict theory by Karl Marx believes that education plays a negative role in society because it is used to maintain social inequality as it gives the elite people more control. On the other hand, functionalist theory share completely opposite views to the conflict theory. So if conflict theory just now focuses on domination and power of social order, functionalist theory believes a society is a complex system that works together to promote stability. Every unit such as family, religion, education, politics, economy, and health must work together and contribute to the functioning of the whole society. So the keyword here are work together. And from the functionalist perspective, education is very important because it interdependently contributes to children's socialization process. Thus, the five main social functions of education have been identified as socialization that happen when you learn the basic roles and also functions of society by working with others. The second one is social control that happen when it gives the authority to teachers to persuade their students that is necessary to behave according to this principle. The third one is selection and allocation of people. The fourth one is assimilation of newcomers. And the fifth one is social innovation and change. However, I don't quite understand the about the postmodernist theory. Would any one of you like to explain more on this theory?
A postmodernist view is an approach that looks to understand society by focusing on rapid change and uncertainty in our society, which are different from conflict and functionalist theory. Postmodernism calls for a different type of education system that encourage self-motivation and supervision, and creativity. It should also provide lifelong training so people can adapt to changes in their work environment. While conflict theory suggests that education maintains inequality, postmodernists argue education reproduces class equality. It is because education has become more diverse and responsive to the needs of different individuals and groups. The six characteristics of postmodern education are high-level thinking, research involvement, cooperation learning, differentiation of instruction, service experiences, and character education.
Such a clear and precise explanations, Alia. So just now we already talked about Muslim scholars' perspective and Western perspective used on education and schooling. So we have already come to the last point of our discussion, which is to talk about the comparison between Islamic and Western perspective on education. So Hanim, would you like to share some ideas on this?
Okay, yes. Okay. Next. Okay, next we continue with the last point, which is the comparison between Islamic and Western perspective on education. So as you can see, I had prepared the tables to compare all this. So from the first column is the focus on Islamic perspective, more focus on materialism and spiritualism. Actually, in Islamic perspective, we more focus on both, not only one aspect. Because why? Like the previous presenter, I think Hani said, as mentioned that Al-Ghazali and Al-Farabi actually both agree that spiritual development is actually important to an individuals. But meanwhile, the Western perspective, they're more focused on materialism only because as they said, they do not believe in spiritual things. And then next, we focus main resource. So from the Islamic perspective, our main source are Quran and Sunnah. Of course, because Quran serves as a comprehensive blueprint for both individual and the society. So it is the primary source of knowledge. Also in Hadith has been mentioned. I have left with you two things which if you follow them, you will never go astray. And which is the book of God, which is Quran, and the Sunnah of his Prophet, which is the Hadith, Sunnah. Meanwhile, for the Western perspective, the main resource actually depends on human reasoning. They're 100% focused on research. They use human reasoning to know how does something happens, why does it affect something. Basically, it is mainly humans itself. And then next, the from the curriculums, from the Islamic perspective, complete integration of all the aspect. So from our education in Islamic perspective, is shumulia, which means complete or perfect. Teaching of Islamic encompasses all the aspect of life in this world and the hereafter. It actually balance the growth of the men's in all aspect, like what what we see in the like I see in the objective of education in Islamic perspective. Not only that, it also a state in the national education philosophy, our national Malaysia philosophy, in which to spiritual, emotional, and physical balance and harmonies based on a firm belief in devotion to God, meaning that we need to include every aspect, not just the since we can see, but also we do not see. And compared to Western, they're obviously lacking in spiritual domains. they do not include spiritual aspect in education like what I said before. They completely differentiated between life and religions. They does not consider the relationship between God and human as socially and intellectually relevant. Okay, next, from how does the perspective view from Islamic perspective and Western perspective towards education. So from Islamic perspective, education as a means of modeling the good character of individual so that they can collectively represent Islamic value and behave as vicegerents of Allah on earth. And then this education shall not only strive for the harmony of thought and actions, instinct and reasons, feeling and emotion, but also for the depth of knowledge and beauty of character. Because the prime mission in this system of education, which is Islamic education, is to produce successful individuals, family, and society, which is fully subservient to Allah. But for the Western's view, they see education as the instrument of life and believe education as a means of individual and national development, meaning that they see education as the instrument of life and believe education as a means of individual and national development. Because the school system does not consider the relationship between God and the human being as intellectually or socially relevant. And then the instrument of life is used to train people only give back to the society, not society on earth only, but they does not contribute to the hereafter because like they do not believe like that. This all.
That was a great explanation. But from your opinion, why Islamic emphasis on spiritual aspect unlike Western perspective?
I would say from what I learned, that spiritual aspect in educations should cultivate an individual to a bit by teaching of religion so that they can be a better person, and then they can contribute back to the society. And what I mean that spiritual actually will affect someone behavior. I'm not saying that people people non-Muslim are not good, but what I mean is we as Islam, we believe in spiritual, we believe in God. So when we have a spiritual aspect, we will observe our behavior, like be good all kind of people. You get what I mean?
Yes. So what you mean is by being spiritual, we will be mindful of our actions, right?
Yes.
Okay. How about others' opinion?
Yes, I agree with Hanim because spiritualism in education is important to ensure the balance of human beings. Education must be made equally for both materialism and spiritualism. Acquiring knowledge in Islam is not intended as an end, but as a means to stimulate a more elevated moral and spiritual consciousness, leading to faith and righteous action.
Thank you, Hani, for sharing your thoughts on the spiritual aspect. So the explanation by Hanim and Hani marked the end of today's discussion. Thank you for participating in the discussion and sharing some insightful understanding. I learned a lot today, and let's meet again another day. Thank you, guys.